So, welcome to CX Exchange Success Hour. I am so excited we could bring this session to you today. Oh, wait, I have to start over. Matter, you have your little one with you today too. Oh, that's Ina, right? Ina, meet Robin's little one too. Don't have Robin's little name, but it's nice to see the babies here today. Okay, now I'm going to start for real. Okay. Welcome to CX Exchange Success Hour. So excited to bring you this today. We're talking about how AI is changing the CS skills we need in 2026 and beyond. And I'm really excited to bring Matt Jandorf from a good friend, someone who's become a good friend of mine now. We've been talking about these topics a lot for at least a year. And let me just go ahead and stop sharing so Matt can introduce himself. Uh, Matt, tell us a little bit about who you are, what all you've been doing at LinkedIn. I know we're going to be sharing more of that during the session today too.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. And before I introduce myself, I would say Jan was talking about how it's an all volunteer group, and I was involved in a live presentation in New York back in September, I think it was,
Yeah,
where we
yeah.
were doing an AI panel. And I just reached out to her a couple of weeks ago and said, "Hey, how can I help with doing more stuff?" She's like, "Oh, you can help with hosting this session. So if you want to get involved, she'll take you up on it." So it's
It's
good.
true.
So maybe be careful what you ask for, but I'm excited to be here. So yeah, my name is Matt Jandorf. I work at LinkedIn. I've been at LinkedIn for 13 and a half years now. And I currently am managing a group of managers and ICs within our customer success organization. And specifically, I'm covering our academic and government lines of business. Um, I've been living in New York, New Jersey area my whole life, except for 2 years when I moved to Ireland and worked over in Ireland. But other than that, been in New York, New Jersey my whole life.
Ah, that sounds like fun. I that's on my bucket list is to live abroad while I'm working. So awesome.
It's a great
Okay,
experience.
so let's dig in because we have so much to cover, and there is so much that's really changing in CS, and AI is having influences in ways that we wouldn't necessarily even expect. So let's um, why don't we start with you, Matt, talking about because I don't know how much people are familiar with because LinkedIn is right there in the middle of all the job and recruiting and all of that. It's not just a social media place where we talk about CS, right? And so there's a lot of studies that LinkedIn has done, and I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, the data that we collect from what folks put on their profiles makes us probably the, preeminent source of data around like what skills people need, where they go to school. There's so much great, rich information that we collect from members. And so it enables us to really keep close to what the trends are, whether it's from a skills perspective, jobs perspective, advertising perspective. I mean, a lot of people still to this day ask me how LinkedIn makes money, and we have a lot of different businesses that we all rely on that data for. So I think, related to this conversation, I think probably an understatement to say that the skills needed for the job of customer success is changing, but that's not happening in a vacuum. It's not the only job. And, to what Jan was saying, we've recently done some studies on the skills that are used and made up for specific jobs across all industries. And what we've seen is that there's a real big difference in what we saw for the last 10 years. So from 2015 to 2025, most jobs, the skills needed for them changed maybe 25% at greatest. But what we're expecting and what we've seen from surveys is that over the next 4 years, so by 2030, we're expecting that even the skills needed today for any job, is expected to change by up to 70%. So there's a lot of change coming. I think we're all aware of that, but it was interesting to see how much of a difference we're expecting to see in a much shorter time. And, that means that we have to change with it for better or for worse and be ahead of it too. So one of the things that I've been thinking about and what we've been seeing, and you probably all have as well, is that AI is definitely accelerating that curve of the skills change. And we're seeing AI taking on things such as data crunching, analysis, prioritization, and even, manual and repeatable work. I was just in an offsite with our leadership team this week where we were talking a lot about AI, and we basically said our mantra is that if there's any task that we do more than 2 times, that we need to start asking ourselves, how do we automate that with AI? So it's a really interesting conversation, really highlighting how quickly skills are changing, and what we're seeing across all industries. It's not just customer success, it's everywhere.
Yeah, and so while you may be thinking about like, oh, that means I need to become more technical and I need to do more things, learn AI, and that is true. But that also means that what's going to happen is you're going to free up more time in your customer facing role to have more time working with the humans. And so then the EQ is going to become more critical. How you strategize your accounts. So you'll be using these tools to develop your strategies, but then it's up to humans to execute on those strategies. And so when we talk about things like multi-threading, you'll have AI to help you identify the accounts where you need to multi-thread more, but then you have to come up with these strategies and start to reach out and do these things. And so then there's going to be this kind of combination of, yes, becoming more technical, but then also becoming more strategic and building up that business acumen. And so your job, if you could imagine, will change in these ways where you both use tech more, but you also have freed up time more to do more with its customer facing. The other thing too that we're seeing as a big trend is because we're becoming more efficient, our team sizes and our overall companies are going to be getting smaller. We've already started to see that with AI first companies where we have companies that are maybe 20 people or 50 people that are, bringing in, billions of dollars, or not billions, I guess millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars, things like that. So, we're starting to see much smaller size. And so that period where we had growth at any cost, and the way that you got to that growth is adding more people. Instead, what happens is you have growth happening through using technology, using data. And so, especially if your company has data silos, that is a huge red flag. That if you're going to move forward in this new age with AI, those data silos cannot be afforded because you'll have big challenges that'll be hard to overcome. And then also when you're looking at that, because we have fewer people who can manage these businesses, then your goals become bigger. Because what we're seeing with AI companies, and I don't know if anybody has subscribed to my newsletter, you can get it on my website. I'll share the link later. But what you see is that you see these trends where the growth up front is like, for any of the companies that are getting the product market fit, are just like going whoosh, going way past what used to take 5, 7, 10 years is now being accomplished by some of these really fast growing AI first companies in 2 years, 4 years. So there's a lot of, big changes in that respect that then impact how you're working inside the company and what your goals are. So one other thing I'll cover before we sort of dig into some of the ways that Matt has seen changes in LinkedIn, just to make it more tactical, is really you see sort of business model influenced and AI new tech influenced. And so what I'll say is there are going to be new roles that you might hear of terms, and you might also see current roles that that are changing a lot. So the example is a forward deployed engineer or a forward deployed CSM. These are people who are more technical, but also have that business understanding. And so they may be working with customers earlier on because when we are using AI, because AI is more expensive, we're moving to consumption-based models, usage-based models, or outcome-based models, or that part of the um, your how you go to market that may be added into what you're doing, in terms of like how you charge. This impacts how you're working with your customers. It also impacts your company and how they're earning revenue. And so what's happening then is you have to start working with the customers earlier. You need to start working with them at the time when they're defining how they're going to be working with your product. So how you onboard them literally needs to change because it needs to be both more technically, more quickly set up in terms of the technical aspect, but it has to work for their business objectives as well. So it's understanding both aspects so that comes in. You might also have something like we did something earlier this year around consumption leads, someone who is paying attention to how the customer is using the product and if it's fitting with their business objectives and if that's also fitting with your growth expectations because you're going to have growth projections that you're trying to hit. And so consumption leads then not only have that business aspect, but then they also have that revenue aspect, right? So thinking about how we help our customers achieve their business goals is critical to our bottom line. You may also see more AI influenced roles like, say, a CS program manager, someone who is looking at the overall journey and plus how we're using the technology, and making plans for how that's going to work internally. Or like a CS AI specialist. You see Zendesk and others hiring for these roles, and that's where it's going to be more execution oriented, someone who's going to take that plan that someone's putting together and making certain that it's executed in ways that can be used quickly and easily, but also then how you train your team to use these products, right? So the commonalities here across all of these is tech AI fluency, absolutely, business acumen, understanding the business of your customers and your own business, and then customer revenue expertise, understanding kind of what are the key levers and leading activities that are going to then produce that lagging indicator of the revenue. So if you've hit it in terms of the revenue, but what do you need to do to get the customer to the point of hitting that revenue and what are the key activities? So you're not trying to do everything under the sun. You're just trying to make certain that you get those key things to happen and assume that the other things will fall in place, as long as you're working on those key activities. We're going to now switch over into sort of a LinkedIn example. So before I move on, I just want to check to see if there's any questions or thoughts that have come up as we've sort of covered like this as sort of an overview. Does this resonate with what you're seeing already? Is this like, wow, what's happening out there in the world? Because I'm not part of it and I want to understand how to get more info. Like what's coming up for folks? Yeah, Tammy, great to see you today.
Likewise, let me go on video.
Yay.
1 second here. Um, Thank you for sharing this. I actually am doing a lot of advisory work in the AI space. And one of the roles I think that's going to be coming up is similar to what you have here, this AI specialist, which is a operator that lives within functional areas, within teams, the one who's looking for opportunities for how to use AI in the space, but also looking at audit and change management of how they're already using it, responsible AI lens, and really thinking about for things that we're putting data in, like if there's a common GPT or something that the team is
Mm-hmm.
using, Is the data still current? Are we getting bad data out? Are we still, so that type of AI operator, I think, is going to be more common in the future. And as companies potentially reduce their workforce, folks that leave, I think, will learn how to do these types of things and come back into the corporate worlds as these types of roles. So I think that's going to be an interesting change, and I think a great opportunity for folks. The other one is a systems like an architect, where they're more of a builder. They don't have to be a CS or a computer science. Sorry, not to conflate the term, a computer science person, but they could be abreast of the current tools that are available. Vibe coding and all those good things also help, and how to enable the team. And so I think you've covered some of that here as well.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
really,
Sort of like the CS program manager. Yeah.
yeah, it's interesting through the lens that you have and the nomenclature you're using for CS, because it's very informative for me, and I appreciate you sharing that with us today.
Yeah. I've also seen like renewals managers who are responsible for growing and renewing revenue, but instead they are much more data oriented, much more about like building out all of the systems and that will enable customers to perhaps even do self-service renewals. And then in some cases, then how does that become also human to human best practices for renewals? And so
I
like
mean,
just even some of the hiring roles that you see, like it might look like, okay, it's a renewals manager. And it's like, oh, wait a minute, look at this job description. Very different. Yeah.
yeah, and you mentioned the word human, right? I mean, you think of human in the loop as such a common phrase these days. It really is more focused on in the tech loop with agentic and things like that. But I think the way forward is, as you described earlier, with EQ, and I also
Mhm.
think critical thinking.
Yeah.
There's these elements of how do you hire, and I don't think companies are quite ready for that yet. But it's not going to be uh, as resume driven potentially, because you can actually do the things using AI. So the skills on the resume aren't as important going forward as the EQ, as the critical thinking will be. And so how we hire will also be interesting, I think.
Yeah. So how you show the impact of what you're able to do, both in terms of what you're able to do, understanding using AI and data, as well as how you use then
Yeah. And
the others.
how
So
you've made people
let's
feel, et cetera.
let's dig into then these examples, because I think it will also help to see from Matt just like the trajectory and how things have changed at LinkedIn. I want to make it tactical.
Yeah, absolutely. And Tammy, to your point, I see myself like having to take on that role. I went to my VP a couple of months ago saying, hey, we need to focus on AI and what we're doing and audit everything that's going on and make sure that everybody's adopting what's going well. So it's, people are just sort of stepping into those roles without it even being created. And it's an interesting space to be in.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah. So when Jan and I were talking about this topic, we thought it might be interesting to bring to life kind of the example that I've seen through being at LinkedIn for 13 and a half years. And one thing that I've found very interesting whenever I attend any customer success event, whether it's in person or online, is that it seems like no matter the size of the company, that we all have a lot of similarities. We're all facing some similar challenges and changes. So I thought I would give some insight into how it's happened at LinkedIn, and maybe you can find some synergies there with your own companies. So I guess when you look at my journey starting at LinkedIn in 2012, we were one line of business. We had 60 CSMs globally. And so I basically knew everybody, and we were basically hiring like we were a startup company. Over the next 8 years, we were in hyper growth mode. We were just throwing people as opposed to well, we were trying technology too, but we were mostly throwing people at the growth of our accounts. And so while we did try to do scaling, it took us a lot of years to get that right. Like we don't feel like we actually got it right until probably 2019. Um, And by that time, we had grown our headcount from those 60 people across one business to over 1,100 people supporting 4 separate lines of business. And at the time, we also went from when I started, where we might have as a CSM maybe 300 accounts each, down to a point where we probably had maybe 100, maybe even less than that. So there was a significant reduction, and again, it was throwing people at the problem. Um, by the time that COVID came around and shortly after it kind of went into full effect, we had a massive layoff within our CS team. So we reduced our headcount by 30%. Some of the reasoning behind that is like I said, we did think we got scaling right in 2019. So we were starting to push it a little bit more, and everybody, no one knew what was going to happen with COVID. We also eliminated multiple teams that we had added to our CS team. Um, but then we realized that we were a bit hasty with that. And in 2021, business picked up again. And so then we had to pull back about 10% of those people. And then since then, for the last probably 4 or so years, everything remained flat as headcount. We didn't add any headcount in CS for about 4 years. And then in May this past year, we actually ended up getting rid of that 10% again that we had recovered back in 2021. But this time it came with a lot of other things too. It was not just the 10% reduction overall, but it was a consolidation of teams. So consolidation of roles within our CS teams. It was also flattening of our hierarchy. So we reduced management layers. And at the same time, we also gave more accounts to CSMs, and we gave them more responsibilities over things like renewal conversations and expansion conversations and a lot more revenue based responsibilities. So through this evolution, we've significantly increased from where we started, but we've also significantly reduced, since the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, and it certainly mirrors kind of what's been happening out there overall. So then, what would you say then is what you've seen the change here? The skill profile?
Yeah, it's interesting. You were talking about the different roles that are popping up, and what we're seeing at LinkedIn is that we're not necessarily changing the name of roles, but we're changing what's expected in the roles that we do have. So, over the last number of years that I've been at LinkedIn, there have been tons of changes. You know, the skills at the beginning were a lot different than they are now, but we've also gone back and forth. For anybody who's been in an organization for a long time, you probably see where you try things multiple times, you come back to it after a few years. So we did a lot of that swinging back and forth. But in the very beginning, we were very focused on what I call like hand-to-hand combat, probably better referred to as like the reactive support. And we're basically helping customers fix problems and then teaching them one-to-one on how to use the product. That did evolve though. We moved away from that. We started to do more with scaling and tech improvements. We started to get away from the training and leaned into be more looking at the longer term and how we can build stronger relationships with our customers. And we were still product experts, but we were much more focused on helping our customers think bigger on how they could leverage our products. We were still at the time hiring for recruiting and L&D expertise. So our biggest product lines are our recruiting software and our learning software. So we were still hiring for that expertise. But if you fast forward to where we are in 2025, a lot of that has shifted. So we're no longer focused on hiring for industry experience. We're more interested in making sure that we're looking that we have project management skills, change management skills, people that have a lot, like Jan was saying, a lot more business acumen, and then being able to look for more things like revenue driving activity and more of those softer things like the multi-threading. So having a plan and knowing how to interact with the different folks.
And it's interesting that you have change management there. That's something I've added to the CS Business Leadership Accelerator because we're in a time of such change. That change leadership, I think, is really, really critical, and how we introduce change not only within our organizations, but also with our customers. That's really critical. So then we want to be sure we get through these next couple of slides. How does this reflect then in terms of what you're doing internally and working with your teams?
Yeah, I think in order to meet the challenges and all the changes in skills and what we're focused on, we've looked at three main things. One is the coaching. So we're spending a lot of our time with our CSMs. Probably one of the number one activities of our managers is coaching to help them develop the different skills that we're looking for, because a lot of our people have been with us for a long time. Then we don't do a lot of recruiting because we're not adding headcount, but when we do, we're actually looking for new skills. We're looking for people that have AI experience already. We're looking for people that can show those project management and change management / change leadership skills. And then we're making sure that we're getting as efficient as we can at our day-to-day jobs and thinking about how do we educate our teams on AI, how do we get them to experiment and then adopt AI. And that can be through things. We're doing multiple things like hackathons. I was talking to Jan about a thing we're doing called the Week Without, which is where we basically will pick 1 week each month. We'll pick a workflow that our teams typically have to do, and we ask them to not do the workflow in the way that they normally would, but to use AI instead to help them with that workflow. And the idea is it's necessity is the mother of invention. So if they're not allowed to do it that way, they have to figure out a new way to do it. And we're hoping that'll be through AI. So that's one way we're doing it. And then the last thing is that we're talking with every week in our one-on-ones, so with our managers and with our individuals contributors, asking them what they've used AI for in the last week, just to make sure that they're keeping it top of mind.
And so that's something, because we were just talking about change leadership, change management, and AI. Introducing AI to your teams is really critical. And so, in terms of how you go about doing it. So, we did have a session in September that was all about AI hackathons, but this idea of sort of, necessity is a mother of invention. Whether you're doing this on your own, if you're in between roles, or if you're at a company and you're trying to think about how to help sort of get your team engaged, I love this idea of a week without, right? If there's something that won't like stop your work entirely, but something that you do on a regular basis. And it's like, if you say, okay, for 1 week, I'm not going to do it the usual way. I will not let myself, because I have like this little thing here where I can do like little notes, where I can write down notes. What if I cannot write down my notes, any little notes on a little sticky pad? What would I do instead? How would that be incorporated, in a way that then I can use it electronically and use it with AI later? Just any little thing, the mother of invention, necessity is the mother of invention, right? When you think about sort of those workarounds.
Yeah, and if I can give you a 5 second quick real life example.
Yeah.
Most of our leaders will do reporting on a weekly basis, and they're often pulling spreadsheets from from a dashboard. And what we've asked them is, for that week without, don't pull those things. Use AI within the dashboard to figure out what you're trying to do. So it's a concrete example of how we're asking them to be innovative.
Great. Any thoughts or questions along the way while we're here? Okay, just checking in. I'm open to it. Okay, we will try to get to breakout rooms in just 1 second, but let's just finish up here. So in terms of how you sort of jump ahead to do this, what were you thinking, Matt?
Yeah, I think probably the biggest challenge we have, whether you're a leader or an individual contributors, is to get ourselves and the other people around us to through the change curve. So you were talking about change leadership, like that's a huge part of this, is just getting ourselves around that change curve and the mindset shifts. But we also have to think about this from preparing our team's perspective. So Tammy, you brought up the idea of like people that are looking as an operator and trying to understand this all. understanding what those new skills will be, how to coach to those, and then constantly challenging ourselves about the future. So thinking, how as a human can I make a difference to my customers and the business? And what unique value do I have to bring to customer interactions? Like those are all different things that I think are really helpful in how we can meet this challenge of the skills changing.
Awesome. Marley, do you want to maybe come off mute and just share what you were just putting in the chat here?
Yeah. Hey, I'm not going to go on screen because I'm like in my kitchen making food, of course. The light.
I love that you can join us today anyway. So good, that's great.
Yeah. No, it's good to chat with everybody. Yeah, it's I think that this resonates with me a lot. I'm a fractional customer success leader and also just do some consulting on the side. And the conversations that I've been having and the work that I've been doing has been around reshaping what the next hires, particularly for companies that are growing. I work primarily with Series A and Series B startups. What the job descriptions need to be and the maturity plans and curves that you would typically expect for customer success organizations. Like they can take like a million different permutations at this point. So I think that while there's a lot of creativity in hiring and what the profiles of these candidates needs to look like, I think it's going to be challenging for those who are not comfortable living in the gray area. And I'm interested to see how that plays out.
Yeah, very much. We need to feel more comfortable with, and I was just, in fact, yesterday posting about this topic and others, this living with this uncomfortable place of learning and growing, right? Because learning and growing with all of this change, it is uncomfortable. But if we don't start to feel if we don't start to feel kind of more comfortable with that uncomfortable place, right? Like there's so much change coming, and how your mindset, I think mindset is really important. How you open yourself up to this flux of change and kind of learning from it and growing from it is going to be really critical, right? For all of us, whether we're in between roles or in a role right now. We should actually, push ourselves outside of our comfort zone to really push through this change. Tammy, you have a lot over here in the chat. Is there a way you can give it to us in a nutshell real quick as we go on to meet each other briefly in some breakout rooms?
Absolutely. I did just try to update it as a TLDR, but I think rethinking just what your portfolio looks like. It could be, and I shared a lot of examples here, but your actually provability through examples, whether it's video recordings, podcasts that you've been on, recommendations from peers that are now more focused on the skills that hiring managers will be looking for, and having on your resume in particular a way to talk about your impact using AI, whether that's on efficiency or even some company-wide impact. So something that you can quantify. I think it's just a change in how we look at it, how we present ourselves generally. So our brands will change, I think.
Yep. And David, I love this in the chat that you just added, is that the biggest challenge isn't learning, it's unlearning and letting go of old ways. And I think that's probably going to be true as well. So I'd love to just go to breakout groups just briefly. We'll just do it for a quick 10 minutes. So I'm going to do small breakout groups. So I really encourage you to stick around and connect with others on this. It's a great way to then connect back into the community over in Slack. So basically what we're looking at is what skills have you changed in CS, seen change in CS in the past few years, or which skill do you want to develop to prepare for 2026 and beyond in CS? So as people come in, I want to just be sure to share real quick. We do have lots of resources, articles about the trends and changes, as well as resources for learning new things. And then if you are in between roles, there's lots of different resources, both in CX Exchange, Step Up Exchange, and our partner Talentway have a link there too. So if you haven't gotten the link for the slides, put something in the chat. We'll make certain that you get the links. Links there. Another thing is I did see a question over here in the chat from Michael Stein. He wanted to understand, how can you really kick the tires on a company that's saying they're AI first and they're innovative, but maybe they are, maybe they aren't, right? And so one thing I just want to be sure to cover for that is one, it's critical that companies are using data in a way that isn't siloed. So in your interview process, you can ask them to explain, well, how are you using data? Do you have access to usage data? You know, are you using unstructured data like from phone conversations and emails? You know, are you analyzing that yet? You know, how are you using data? That would be a great question to ask, because if you're AI first and really doing innovative things, you have access to everything. You're working off of everything. Another thing that I can think of is asking if they have, you know, hackathons, or, you know, what is their process to creating innovation within the company. Every AI first company I know, every company that's rapidly trying to transition into AI, they're doing hackathons or doing different kinds of initiatives in that way. So I would ask about, you know, those types of things. What other ideas do people have around this that you could suggest? Anybody? How have you kicked the tires? How have you observed if a company is uh Matt, why don't you come off mute? Tell us.
Yeah, I think it's important to understand what AI tools you have available. Some companies have a lot more than others because of privacy concerns or whatnot, but I think that would be an interesting thing to understand. What tools are they just relying on people to use just their own, like Chat GPT, or do they actually have tools that they've enabled internally to be able to do stuff?
Yeah. Yeah, because if they're just saying cursor is for the engineering team versus we've opened it up to everybody or something like that, you know, like what are you put your money where your mouth is? What are you really doing? What other things? Where you go? It's nice to see you. I see you nodding your head. Did you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I just want to kind of just add on to that. I think so I'm not I've been actually interviewing with different companies, and one company actually impressed me with the level of AI tools that they have actually within the org. So I mean, like different depending on the company, like some companies are just starting out to explore the tools, while some companies are also like a bit more mature and have brought in like tools for their employees. So for example, this particular company obviously had, they had they had an enterprise license for ChatGPT, Gemini, all the different like generative AI like type of tools, but also just internally they were actively encouraging their employees to actually start to build out agents directly on Lovable and Replit. So they do have like an enterprise level license actually for their CSMs to build out things actively on this. So I think also that just what Matt said, really understand like where they are, and also like if there's budget allocated, especially I think as we approach 2026, we're seeing a lot more leaders really leaning into AI. So really understanding like if there's budget as well would be something that I would ask if I was, actively pursuing a role, and I'm interested in seeing where they are in terms of their AI growth and direction.
Awesome.
I
Thank
have
you. And Matt, I know you have to take off. We'll just be finishing up here, but thank you so much, Matt. Really appreciate how you jumped right in with all of this.
Yeah, thank you all. It was great to have the opportunity.
Yeah.
Hope to see you all around again soon.
Awesome. And Sean, you had something to contribute or a question?
Just echoing what others have commented on,
Mm-hmm.
looking for indicators that leadership team, whether you're applying for leadership or an IC role, there's encouragement to explore new tools, new processes, a lot of the things that Matt commented on earlier, but also asking about how the team is incentivized, whether that's comp-based incentivization or incentivized to execute from a collaboration standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's a few $100s or even thousands of dollars, some organizations are really encouraging of trying new things, and others make it very difficult. Almost, they'll talk the talk when it comes down to execute. Don't give you the time, space, and budget to actually do that effectively. So there's some fun questions you can ask to try to dig into that. And then earlier on, I made a comment about just talking to their customers. So if it's a I don't know, GTM solution, right? Most of us have peers in sales and success and marketing that we can probably reach out to say, hey, have you heard of this tool? Have you used it? Do you know someone who's using it? Especially if it's a more established company, someone has some opinion on it as a customer, and that'll dictate, how AI native or how innovative the team over there actually is when it comes to leveraging AI to work smarter, more effectively, et cetera.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, great. Great contribution. Tammy?
One final note from me.
I love it. I love that you've been participating so much today. It's
Thank you.
helpful. Great.
And I'm happy to help however I can for anyone who wants to reach out. One thing that really helped me is joining AI communities that are focused on AI. I'm in quite a few women in AI groups, and I was just invited to teach. I'm moderating panels, and this is all through that group. And I was pulled in on a podcast. So I think those are giving me the artifacts that I need as well from my clients to see, what I think and how I present. So I think that's another way for folks that are looking to, flex their AI muscle or grow an AI muscle. You can find a safe community that feels like home for you. It's a nice way to do that on the side.
Great.
Not
And
to
if you
take
want
away
to
from your
share,
community.
if you want to share information about that community here in the chat or over in Slack, that would be super helpful.
Yeah, I'll share it in
Oh,
Slack. I have a whole spreadsheet of my communities that I'm in. So
oh, great.
I'll just share a link to it. I've never shared it out before, but I'm happy to.
Oh, that's fantastic. And we have an AI and CS channel in our Slack community. So I imagine you'll put it there, Tammy?
Yeah, of course. That sounds good.
That's great. That's great. And so I definitely want to recommend people joining our Slack channel, contributing and asking questions or sharing things over in that AI and CS channel. Also, if you're in between roles, whether you're doing sort of your own DIY process and you're contributing and sharing in CX Exchange, or if you want to be a part of the career crafting community that I guide, something I strongly recommend is start experimenting and playing with these tools. You get people, get so worried about like, oh, how can I vibe code? In fact, vibe coding is a prompt. It's just a different output. If you put in a prompt over in ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini and you're having a conversation, that is the output, is the conversation, right? And you get something that maybe you're going to use for writing or you're just working through an idea, whatever it may be. But you use the same sort of type of prompt, but maybe slightly, different because you want a different output. You put that over in something with your vibe coding, like the AI studio that I have a link to here, or if you're using Replit, or you can use Cursor or Lovable or any of those. Then what you do is you have a different output. You can have a website, and that website can be all about you, and it can share your other projects or information about you, right? And then for your resume, you can share, this is my website that I vibe coded, right? So you're showing how you're using the tools, right? So all of these things are ways in which you can start to use these tools and become more familiar with, kind of what are the parameters, what are the best ways to get things out of it. If you haven't tried Nano Banana and you're wondering like, oh, what is that? How can I use it? It's just you're going over to Gemini 3, which is gemini.google.com. And when you put in image, yeah, and you select image, that is Nano Banana, right? And the reason why people are raving about it is because it's really easy to use and it creates like incredible images, right? So all of these things, take a look at whatever platforms you're on, whether it's LinkedIn or Instagram or wherever, take a look at what people are talking about and just go over and look at it. It's more about trying things and learning, what that experience is, what that looks like. And tools are getting much, much easier to use because of AI. So I just want to encourage everyone. Thanks for staying a couple minutes longer. I'll let you go now. But the point is to get over that fear bump, get over that hump of fear, and just dip your toe in and just get started and try it out. You'll be amazed at what you can do. And if you're not sure, if you said, I tried it and it was a disaster, I don't know what I'm doing, go over to the AI and CS channel and say, hey, has anybody used this before? Because I'm not sure how to get started. And I bet you somebody else has. Okay, so that's how we help each other through it. It's through community that we help each other. And I'm just so glad that you were here today. And just keep going out there and trying the next thing. All right? Great to see you all. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks,
Awesome.
Jen.
All right, take care. See you in the community.
Thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode of Success Hour, formerly known as CS Office Hours. We regularly put out new content, so to be the first to know, like this episode, tap that notification bell, hit that subscribe button, and we look forward to seeing you soon.